She has previously earned.
Betty Reader has not waived her.
Does she?
No.
Already posted in the Superior Court, may stand.
Copy of the bond that's previously been posted. Yes.
And assume in the normal course it would be here.
Morning, guys. Whoa. Okay. Congratulations. I hear they had to move you into the celebrity wing with Sean Penn, the Ninja Brothers, and the Night Stalker. I'm Danny Davis, your new attorney. Kelly couldn't stand the heat, so he got out of the kitchen. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Come on, chop, chop. Attorney-client privilege. Shut the door. Now, don't worry, kid. I'm the best there is. I haven't left anybody in jail yet. Come on, guys. Give me a break, will ya? Come on. Everybody's watching your cage, so here's the deal. You don't talk to anybody. Not anybody. You don't say you did it. You don't say you didn't do it. You just don't talk.
What? Why am I here? I didn't do anything.
Well, congratulations again. You'll be the first innocent client I ever had.
No one in my family has ever been arrested. This'll kill them.
Well. Are you kidding with those glasses? You look like a child molester. Get rid of them or it's going to be a short trial.
People would consider it the most heinous of crimes, sexual abuse of children. It has leaped from the back to the front pages recently, following the alleged sexual abuse of 18 children at a nursery preschool. We want to talk about how to protect your children from abuse, but first we have asked Maria Shriver to bring us up to date on the current case in California.
There aren't any children at the Virginia McMartin preschool anymore. For over 10 years, parents did bring their children here, confident it was the best school around. They felt comfortable with the care and the concern the teachers showed their children. Last week, Miss Virginia, as the children called her, plus 3 of her family members and 3 employees, were charged with 115 counts of child molestation. The sordid tale surfaced last August when a 2.5-year-old boy told a counselor he had been sexually abused at the school. As required by law, the counselor informed authorities. Police began questioning parents, and a nightmare quickly unfolded. Tales of rape, sodomy, and reports that animals were mutilated in the classroom to scare the children into silence. The beachfront community was in shock, and for many, justice hasn't moved quickly enough.
People feel, I don't know if I would characterize it as betrayal, but there's incredible frustration that this process is taking so long and that in the meantime, each one of these families is just trying to get through the day.
Authorities say the pattern of sexual abuse at the McMartin school may have gone on for more than a decade. The 7 defendants will be arraigned Friday. They face prison sentences of up to 156 years. Maria Shriver, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Those children who were allegedly abused at the preschool are now receiving counseling, and we have asked our child psychologist, Dr. Jerry Broadley, to join us this morning to talk about ways to safeguard children without frightening them. Good morning, Jerry.
Morning, Bill.
What surprises me, I think, about these kinds of stories is why they go on, in some cases, for a very long time, and the child actually keeps silent about it. How does that happen?
Well, the most common reason is fear. The child is threatened that something could happen to them or something happened to their parents, which is what allegedly took place in this situation. Sometimes, Bill, though, guilt can be a factor where the child may feel that they perhaps are somewhat responsible for what takes place going on. And then for the very young children, it's interesting, perhaps they don't even know what to expect in going to school. You see, the parents pick out the school. They say, you're going to go there, it's a nice place, so that they assume by implication that whatever goes on is okay.
This is what school is really like.
That's right. And remember, we're talking about 2-year-olds, and 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds.
How can a parent prepare a child for the possibility of sexual abuse, teaching them that this is wrong, this is not normal?
Well, one thing when youngsters start school is to explain to them what to expect, what goes on in school, a typical day, so that if there's anything out of the ordinary taking place, perhaps that will be brought up. Another thing is to indicate to the child that it's okay to say no to adults. You see, we train children to go out for the babysitter and say, do whatever the babysitter says, or do whatever the teacher says. And we have to, I think, be a little more specific in the sense of saying there are times that it's okay to say no to an adult. And when we bring up the area of sexuality, that may be one of the things we need to tell a child.
We want to know how it's going on and signs to look for in a child. I was reading where very often the children will drop clues, but the parents don't want to believe it or don't want to hear it. A child will come home and say, the teacher was wearing strange green underwear or something like that, and you let it go by.
Well, I'm afraid after this type of incident, that's not going to go by so readily, but
yes.
Symptoms of withdrawal, of stomach aches and headaches, signs of anxiety, even a child showing a greater obsession towards or concern about sexual phenomenon, looking at their parents in the shower or what have you, which suddenly seems to take place. But if there's a change in the child's level of anxiety, that's something that needs to be investigated. Indeed, it's more than likely this is not going to be the cause, but that may warrant a contact with the school, see what's going on over there as far as what they have to contribute. And another thing is, parents, I think, don't visit schools enough. They don't surprise a school, just pop in and say, how are things going? I mean, any school should welcome a visit by the parents at any time.
So you advise checking the school out as best you can?
Indeed, and checking with the other parents. See if their children are experiencing any discomfort with the school. Talk to other youngsters' parents who go to the same school.
One of the terrible things about this case, one of the parents said that suddenly their 2-year-old was bearing the responsibility of life and death, trying to protect the parents whose lives had been threatened from being hurt, from being harmed.
Terribly sad.
It's
terribly sad.
Just amazing. Jerry Brodley, thanks for helping us this morning. We're going to be back with the mayor of San Francisco. A preliminary hearing has started in Los Angeles where several people are accused of sexual abuses against children at a preschool. Among the defendants, 77-year-old Virginia McMartin, founder and owner of the now closed school. One parent later told reporters about problems her child is having in the case.
My daughter was watching a news broadcast with us where the defendants were shown on camera, and she hid. Literally turned away from the television, leaned over on the floor, and hid and curled up into a ball.
A 7-year-old boy who testified yesterday said he was molested by teachers at the school. Agents of the Alcohol, Tobacco,
Defense
and
lawyers are seeking dismissal of child molestation charges against Virginia McMartin and teachers in her preschool program. They claim recent legislation shortened the statute of limitations and charges should be dropped.
But having spent the last 11 months in a preliminary examination with no end in sight, I'll take the back door, the side door, a trap door. I just want my client out of here.
Legal experts say other child molestation cases besides McMartin's could be affected.
Let my 21 Finnish UN soldiers are still being held hostage by the South Lebanon Army. Prosecutors in the McMartin child molestation case say their case has not been weakened by a judge's decision to dismiss the bulk of the charges. The judge in the preliminary hearing in Los Angeles has thrown out about 140 more charges simply for lack of evidence. Prosecutors say they intend to proceed with a trial against nursery school founder Virginia McMartin and 6 others who worked at the now closed preschool.
In California today, parents reacted angrily after a judge threw out hundreds of child molestation charges. The charges came from the McMartin preschool investigation. The judge acted after prosecutors said they were unwilling to make more children testify in court. David Dow reports all that points to the problems in presenting cases alleging sexual abuse of children.
Though it's just a preliminary hearing, it has always seemed a case of immense proportions. Virginia McMartin and 6 teachers facing, by some counts, more than 300 charges of molesting children in the nursery school that Mrs. McMartin founded. Now, the case has some other big numbers. More than 200 of those charges have been thrown out by a judge who insists she is not throwing out the case itself.
But this is hardly fatal to the people's case.
True, some charges remain against all the defendants. True, the prosecutor claims she's got enough evidence to file 50 new charges. But the latest twist has reignited the frustrations of parents of children allegedly abused.
I have a daughter who has massive evidence of being raped and being sodomized. Somebody did it.
And it has reignited the running national debate concerning the rights of children in such cases versus the rights of the accused.
The children aren't ready for adult questions. They're not ready for an attempt to wear them down with cross-examination. And our system isn't ready to say we ought to treat children differently than adults.
There's a great tendency to side on behalf of the children in these kind of cases. We've got to make sure that the sympathies, the emotional response really doesn't end up in the balance being made incorrectly.
The judge in the McMartin case began dismissing charges when the prosecution had run out of witnesses. 13 of 41 alleged child victims had testified at that point. The testimony of several others depended on a new law, one allowing them to appear via closed-circuit television without the pressure of facing their alleged abusers. But Judge Bob refused to apply the law retroactively. The prosecutor says she'll appeal, and next week these hallways will be jammed again as the McMartin case continues through its 10th month. David Dow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Lightning is
nearly 2 years after they stood accused. 7 people will now stand trial in the McMartin preschool sex abuse case. A Los Angeles judge ruled yesterday there is enough evidence to proceed. Concerned parents packed the courtroom during the months of hearings. 78-year-old Virginia McMartin, founder of the school, her grandson Ray Bucky, and 5 others face a total of 135 charges.
Obviously, this is a day that we have all looked forward to for a long time. No one ever believed that this case would take 18 months to get to a preliminary hearing. I certainly hope that the trial will take a lot less than that.
So we go to trial, and we come in front of our peers, and they will decide.
During the pre-trial hearings, children testified about having to take part in bizarre sex games and rituals.
There is furious reaction tonight against the prosecution's latest move in the case that helped center national attention on the problem of child abuse in nurseries. CBS News correspondent David Dow looks at today's development in California's lurid McMartin preschool case.
After spending 2 years and $4 million to develop one of the nation's most publicized child molestation cases, prosecutors went to court this morning and dropped charges against 5 of the 7 defendants.
There is strong evidence, compelling evidence, to indicate that 2 of these defendants are guilty. The evidence and the indication as to the other 5 is incredibly weak and could not justify the possibility of filing criminal charges.
Originally, the 7 teachers faced more than 300 charges of molesting children at the McMartin preschool, of forcing the children into alleged naked games and other sexual rituals. Last week, after an 18-month preliminary hearing, a judge ordered all 7 to stand trial on a total of 135 counts. But today's action left only Raymond Bucky and his mother as defendants, and parents of the alleged victims outraged.
We were idealistic enough to believe that the crimes against children deserved prosecution.
I just can't imagine walking into the local Safeway and seeing one of them there.
If we allow this to happen, pedophiles all over the country can get jobs in preschools and can molest kids.
Released defendants claimed that they had been victims of public emotion.
I know the suffering that can come upon innocent people as a result of this hysteria.
They filled the children full of fantasies. They fibbed to the children. I never did anything wrong, and I was never aware or never saw anything wrong.
Next steps, arraignment and then trial for the 2 remaining defendants in the McMartin case, the final laps in a legal marathon that is expected to run for many more months. David Dow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
I don't think you have anything to worry about. I think it'll be fair. Just tell it like it is. Tell the truth. Everything will be okay.
I don't know why I agreed to do this.
You look nice. She's pretty, doesn't she? You look really nice. Oh, yeah. Come on. You look good.
This is 60 Minutes.
Well, during the time that I was in jail, the custody of my children was taken away from me. They were taken from the school that we placed them in. They were arrested. I don't know for what. At that time, my son was 8. Along with everyone else, I lost every material possession I ever had. I lost all my teaching credentials, which I'd gone 6 years of college to get.
In this country, if you're accused, you're guilty. God help you if you try to prove you're innocent.
Fucking ain't right.
And that's the way we've been treated from the first day.
You know who should be made to watch this? Ira Reiner. Ira Reiner should be made to watch this. You gonna get him on camera?
Virginia McMartin, Betty Rader, Mary Ann Jackson, Peggy Ann Bucky. Their homes, their money, their honor, everything gone. Deserved?
No, of course not.
So who do these people go to get their money back and their life back? The county? Your predecessor? Children's Institute International?
That's not the sort of question I should be getting into.
Hardly a day goes by without news of another case of child abuse, of sexual molestation of children. The rash of stories was touched off 3 years ago by the case of the McMartin preschool. It was the biggest child molestation case in history. Over 300 counts of sodomy, rape, and oral copulation brought against 3 generations of the McMartin family and 3 teachers at their preschool in an upper middle-class suburb of Los Angeles called Manhattan Beach. There was more than sexual molestation involved. There were tales of satanic rites, of pornographic pictures, of the mutilation of animals to frighten the children into silence. But from the beginning, the defendants in the case, the teachers, have insisted that they were the victims of a latter-day witch hunt.
The United States has the rottenest judicial system in the whole world. Don't let anybody talk to me about Russia or South Africa or anything. We have it right here. You are guilty, and God help you if you try to prove you're innocent. That's the way we've been treated since the first day.
Virginia McMartin is founder and owner of the now defunct McMartin Preschool. For 3 years, she, her family, and her colleagues have had to live with devastating publicity and personal disgrace. The prosecution brought more than 300 counts of molestation and conspiracy against the 7 defendants.
People versus Raymond Bucky, Peggy McMartin Bucky.
This was their arraignment in a Los Angeles courtroom back in March of 1984. Raymond Bucky was refused bail. He is still in jail awaiting trial. His mother, Peggy McMartin Bucky, was held without bail for 2 years. She also faces trial. Babette Spittler, a teacher, was held in jail for 2.5 months and then released on $400,000 bail. Betty Rader, a teacher, held for 3 months till she was released on $750,000. Peggy Ann Bucky, Virginia McMartin's granddaughter, was held for 2.5 months until she was released on $100,000. Mary Ann Jackson, a teacher, released on $100,000. And Virginia McMartin was arrested and released on $50,000 bail. 2 years ago, the defendants were described by the prosecution as so dangerous to the community that they should be kept in jail with no bail while awaiting trial. But early this year, when a new district attorney looked at the evidence, he said it was incredibly weak as to 5 of the women, and he dropped all charges against those 5. 5 women who are now trying to put their lives back together. What happened to your individual lives because of these charges?
My character, my reputation has been destroyed.
Ms. Jackson?
We lost everything, almost everything that we had accumulated in 38 years of our married life.
Ms. Spittler?
Where do I start? During the time I was in jail, the custody of my children were taken away from me. During my jail time, I called them on the phone what times I could, because that privilege was not given to me very often.
Where were they?
With my brother. They were taken from the school that we had placed him in and arrested. At the time, my son was 8. He was, there I go again. He was told he was under arrest.
Under arrest for what?
He doesn't know for what. I don't know for what. I don't know why they took him into custody. I was behind bars if I was such a threat to him.
Peggy?
I, along with everyone else, lost every material possession that I had. I saw my family lose their home, their school, their bank account, everything. Everything went to attorneys, every last penny. I lost my career. I went 6 years to college to teach special ed, and the state has revoked my teaching credentials.
And some of the children that have accused her she wasn't even in the school.
How long were you at the school? That is the McMartin preschool.
I was there 5 weeks in 1978 as a substitute teacher, and that's all I was there.
And you, Miss Spindler?
4 years.
4 years. And you were charged basically with doing what?
Oral copulation on children and having children do it to me.
That's enough.
What was I charged with? The same as she just mentioned.
Now, what is that all about? Why would the child say it if it weren't so?
Mike, I do not know. How do you defend yourself against a child?
How did this case get started? Where did those charges come from? The first complaint was made on behalf of a 2.5-year-old boy by his mother in August of 1983. She called the Manhattan Beach Police, and she accused a young teacher at the McMartin preschool, Ray Bucky, Virginia McMartin's grandson, of molesting her son. Later, that same mother told authorities that her little boy had also been molested by others and that he had been attacked by wild animals. She was later diagnosed as having mental problems. But at the time, the Manhattan Beach Police had no reason to doubt the woman, so they arrested Ray Bucky and then released him for lack of evidence. But they did not stop there. They sent this letter to 200 families whose children attended the school. In it, they named the McMartin School, and Ray Bucky in particular, as a suspect in child molestation. And they asked the parents to interrogate their own children about oral sex, fondling of genitals, buttocks, or chest area, and sodomy. And they state that photos may have been taken of children without their clothing. The letter understandably panicked a lot of parents who besieged the district attorney's office. The DA sent the parents and their youngsters here to Children's Institute International, CII, where almost 400 children were eventually interviewed. Those interviews were used to prepare the indictments of the 5 women, as well as Ray Bucky and his mother, Peggy Bucky. What you are watching is a demonstration of the CII interview technique using puppets and dolls. The actual videotaped interviews in this case have been sealed by court order. CII reported that a full 85%, 350 of the 400 children interviewed, showed signs of molestation. But as we said, 2 years later, a review of those videotaped interviews led the current Los Angeles District Attorney Ira Reiner to drop all charges against 5 of the defendants. He dropped all charges against those 5, despite the fact that after an 18-month preliminary hearing, a judge had ordered all 7 defendants to stand trial. What did Ira Reiner see on those videotapes?
But what we had here were the social workers in questioning the children, asking very leading and very suggestive questions of the children. They'd have little Bobby sitting there, and they'd say to Bobby, did the bad teacher touch you in a yucky way in this place right here? And Bobby would say no, and they would push a few times, and Bobby would continue to say no. Then they'd say, but wait a minute, Johnny has already told us that this happened. Now, you're just as smart as Johnny, aren't you? And after a little bit of this, then maybe Bobby would say, okay, he'd nod his head, yeah, it happened that way. Now, Bobby hasn't supplied any details. He has been bawled out, if you will, or chastised because he isn't as smart as someone who allegedly has already told them about this. He has been rewarded with praise when he says, yes, it did happen. What you have here is a situation then where hundreds of children have been questioned, and then this material is turned over to the district attorney's office. The district attorney then, at that time, without any investigation whatsoever, none at all, turns it over to the grand jury for indictment purposes. Not surprisingly, the grand jury indicted. Now, with that as a background, is it any surprise that you have the kind of case that developed? It certainly isn't.
What you're charging is that the former district attorney, Philip Ozian, simply did a miserable job.
What he did is he charged people without any investigation whatsoever. This case was submitted to the grand jury without any investigation. The grand jury returned indictments, and that started the ball rolling.
You're charging Philibosian with an unprofessional job.
Well, that hardly begins to describe it.
I think it's sad that he is expending his time and his energy attacking me when he should be expending his time and his energy supporting the children in that case and supporting the parents of those children who have been through untold agonies from the very beginning.
Robert Philibosian was Ira Reiner's predecessor as district attorney of Los Angeles. So you feel no sympathy or deep concern for these 5 defendants?
These 5 defendants are not the subject of sympathy or deep concern. The subject of sympathy and deep concern are the children who were molested.
And if the children's allegations are not right?
A grand jury said they were right. A preliminary hearing judge said they were right. After hearing them testify day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out for 18 months, a judge said that they were right.
And Mr. Philibosian went on to say,
so when Mr. Reiner says that there wasn't sufficient evidence or there wasn't sufficient corroboration, he is disagreeing with the grand jury, he is disagreeing with the judge, and he in fact is disagreeing with his own deputy in the case.
Philibosian brought CII into the case, and he's persuaded their contribution was vital.
They provided the ability for the prosecutors and for the investigators to learn from the children what had happened. It is incredibly difficult for a child to describe sexual assault, sexual molestation. In fact, it is difficult for an adult to describe such a situation.
What those children did describe was not only molestation, but naked games engaged in by all 7 of the defendants, porno picture sessions, and animal mutilations designed to frighten them into silence. They also told of satanic rituals and sexual abuse to which they were subjected after being flown during school hours to another city. Mary Emmons is executive director of CII, Children's Institute International.
I believe that the children described in the words and the ways that they knew how what they had experienced.
One of the children, or several of the children, said that they went to an airport and took a trip and had some kind of an experience, awful experience, and flew back and went back to school, and all of this was between 9 and 12 of a given day.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it's well documented in the literature that the children of this age do not have any sense of time or the kind of sense that we as adults have.
But they know if they're flying.
I agree. I think they would know if they're flying.
And were any horses dug up? Were any animals slaughtered? Did any satanic rites take place? Did any pictures of pornography show up any place? Any of the above, not 1 or 2, any.
I think you're correct. I know of none.
Why do you believe these children, Miss Emmons?
I think the children's way of telling what they had to tell was based on very convincing information, and there's very convincing medical evidence that backs up what the children are saying.
But as far as your procedures were concerned, as far as the information that you've gotten on these videotapes, you have no doubt that it's good, accurate information and will stand up in court and should stand up in court.
Mike, the procedures that we used were designed to provide treatment to the children that came here. They were not designed for a court of law.
All right. But material from those interviews did get into a court of law. They became a major part of the criminal case as some of the children on the tapes came to court to testify. Meanwhile, the prosecution tried to corroborate the children's stories of animal mutilation, underground tunnels, Satanism, and child pornography, and they failed. Despite a worldwide search aided by the FBI, nothing was found.
They even dug up all around the school looking for underground tunnel, and we have a devil that lives under the avocado tree. Now, if you drive me down there, I'll see if I can get him to come out and meet you.
And then the medical evidence of scarring due to molestation reported by CII's doctors came under attack when it turned out that none of the 350 alleged victims, their parents, or their pediatricians had ever complained about that in the past before the case broke.
Can you believe that every child that ever went to that school for the last 25 years was molested and not a
28.
single parent ever recognized it?
Beyond that, the 5 women say that the school was too small, too intimate for anyone to molest children there and allegedly play naked games indoors and out without everyone knowing.
It's impossible.
Why?
The school is very small. 4 classrooms, all connected.
Big windows.
Big windows in all the classrooms, windows even on the doors. Sits on the busiest street in Manhattan Beach, traffic going by it all the time, and there is no way that anything could go on in that school without everyone knowing what's going on within the school.
Assistant District Attorney Lael Rubin has been lead prosecutor in the McMartin case under both District Attorney Philibosian and his successor, Ira Reiner. Were hundreds of children molested at the McMartin school, sexually molested?
Very large numbers of children were molested at school. I mean, I don't see that at this point, whether one says it were 50 or 100 or 200 or 300, that really is beside the point at this point in time. Because what is the issue is that children were molested at this school.
But
whether there be 2 or whether there be 100.
oh, wait a minute. If there were 2, then it wouldn't have gotten the attention that it got. And you were the lead attorney pushing this, not just inside the preliminary hearing, but outside in the halls, too, and talking to the press.
Well, what I talked to the press about outside in the hall was, for the most part, about evidence, testimony that had already been presented inside the courtroom.
Deputy DA Lael Rubin told UPI many of the children said they were taken from the school to other locations where still and motion pictures were made and the youngsters, quote, were offered up to strangers for whatever purposes, close quote. You believed that when you said it and believe it now?
Absolutely.
You told the press, Miss Rubin, that the discovery of rabbit ears, a cape, and a candle were corroboration of the satanic aspect of this case. Right?
I was quoted as saying that. That's correct.
Still believe that?
That
there are satanic aspects to this case?
We did have testimony at the preliminary hearing about some activities that I suppose one would refer to as satanic.
We asked Rubin why none of the children, their parents or pediatricians, had ever complained about molestation before the case broke.
Do you really think that there are doctors out there who 2, 3, 5 years ago, pediatricians who really were trained to examine young children in their genital areas? Many of the doctors suggested other alternatives or other reasons for pain, discomfort, urinary infections, vaginitis, all sorts of other problems.
Is it possible, Ms. Rubin, that they are better trained to understand than are you?
Well, they're medical doctors and I'm not, but what I'm saying is that not only they, but parents and a lot of other people in this case, we're not willing to believe and accept that, in fact, children were being molested.
Our children were pioneers. I mean, they forged a whole new interest in an area that none of us ever wanted to believe existed, and that's child molestation.
Tim Wheeler is the father of 2 children allegedly molested. He arranged for us to talk to a group of McMartin parents.
We all thought of a perpetrator as some dirty old man in a trench coat that exposed himself and ran. And they certainly didn't live in your area. They hung out in Central Park or some place where you don't go.
Why did no pediatrician ever have a report made by even one parent along the way about this kind of thing prior to this business coming out?
But that isn't correct, sir. It isn't. Many of us took our children to our pediatricians and said, we're having problems. There's bleeding with bowel movements. There's vaginitis. And they said, stop the bubble bath. Okay, we did that. Or have more bran in their cereal. Fine, we did that. And it continued. So we saw these things, our pediatricians saw them, and they had no knowledge to link it because we were from wonderful homes, lovely homes, in a nice community. We were only taking them to preschools.
If the specifics of what the child has said will not stand up under scrutiny, then it is sensible to wonder if indeed the molestation of all of these people in all of these events took place.
Well, there's one issue that's avoided, and that is the overall evidence. You can't look at one specific instance and say, we're going to analyze it by whether or not a plane ride occurred. If a plane ride happened, there was molestation that occurred. Okay, what they always come back to is that I was molested, I was touched, I was forced into oral copulation, objects were stuck up my anus, whatever the case may be. It always comes back to that.
This was a case that involved the molestation of some children. It was blown massively out of proportion to become the case of the century. It is nothing of the sort. It is simply a case of some children, a few children, over a period of years being molested.
Obviously, you don't think the charges against the 5 women should have been dropped.
Absolutely not.
And it is this man, Raymond Buckey, and his mother, who are still facing scores of charges of sodomy and rape of children under 14. Raymond Buckey has been held without bail in Los Angeles County Jail for the last 2.5 years.
Why are you talking to us now? You've never spoken to a reporter before, is my understanding.
No.
Why are you talking now?
I think it's time.
Why
I think the tide is turning where people are stepping back out of the hysteria that grew out of this and looking at this. Wait a minute. There's too much here that can be disproved. And we want to see that person. People want to look at me, because I think everybody believes that they can look into someone's eyes, and if I was the monster that I've been made out to be, everybody would have known it.
You never, repeat, never had anything of a sexual nature take place between you, Ray, and any of these children?
Never.
Let me read you what the kids say, couple. You've seen all of this stuff. Did Ray put his penis inside your mouth? Yes. And did he put it inside your butt? Yes. Did it hurt? Yes.
I think some of the children have actually come to believe it happened. They've been told so many times, they've been reinforced by what they were led to say from the very beginning, that they can get up on the stand and say, yeah, Ray did that to me. Well, how did he do it? What position you're in? I don't remember. They can't give you any specifics because it never happened. To be led to say something at that young of age and to believe the adults that are around you that are reinforcing you to say it, you're going to believe it after a while.
They've dropped the charges against 5 of the defendants. It's only you and your mother who are involved now.
Yes.
Why?
You know, you've got to have a scapegoat. You kept 2 people in jail for 2 years. You're going to back off now and say, oh, sorry, they're innocent too? It's an amazing fact how you can have the same evidence and the same children testifying against all 7, but you can say there's weak evidence against 5 of them.
No, the evidence is not the same. Not all of the evidence was compromised by CII and their process and their techniques of asking leading and suggestive questions. As you go through the tapes very carefully, you will find some of the statements made by the children have a great deal of specificity and detail to them. Many of the statements are very spontaneous. And not in every case did they put words into the children's mouth. There are 2 people of those 7.
Ray Buckey and his mother.
And his mother. That we are convinced, upon carefully looking at the evidence, that indeed they did molest these children.
We know what's going to happen if you're found guilty by a jury.
Yes.
You're going to go to prison for a long, long time, obviously.
If I survive in there.
What do you mean?
They'd mark me. They'd mark me if I'm free or if I'm put in prison.
If you're in prison, you're afraid that something could happen to you at the hands of the prison population.
I'm not afraid. I'm aware of the reality of prison.
And if you go free?
They've ruined my life. I've watched them ruin my family. I've watched them ruin my mother and grandmother's lives. I've watched them ruin my sister's career. I was just starting at that school. I hadn't made up my mind of what I wanted to do in life. But they burned a scarlet letter on me that I can never get rid of. I don't know what kind of life I would have. I can't trust people anymore because I've seen too much of the politics, the corruption, the evil, the anger, the ignorance.
Nonetheless, Ray Buckey and his mother, Peggy McMartin Buckey, go on trial this month in Los Angeles. The 5 women are free of all charges, but not of all taint.
We all would like our names cleared. And that, to me, is almost second to, I think people have to know what happened here. I think people in the world need to know this was a witch hunt, that nothing happened at the school, and it could happen to anyone. because it can, and it has been. It's happening all over the country. Because of this case, it has happened everywhere. And if people realize nursery schools aren't places where children are being molested and raped and sodomized, it doesn't happen. It didn't happen in ours.
I believe in this case, and I believe that horrible crimes occurred at the McMartin preschool. And that's what I intend to argue to a jury.
Roll. Here, look at this, look. Watch.
To me, there isn't anything that can equal the smile and love of a small child. Forgive me, I go on and on when I get started on my favorite subject, children.
But last year, the mother of one of the students, Judy Johnson, noticed her 2.5-year-old son was having a redness on his bottom and having nightmares. She accused Virginia McMartin's 25-year-old grandson, Raymond Bucky, seen here in this home movie at the school's Halloween parade.
Ray Bucky?
The Manhattan Beach police sent letters to parents whose children had attended the McMartin preschool, asking them to question their children about possible cases of sodomy, oral copulation,
this is the most sickening
fondling
thing.
Yeah, and guess who their lawyer wants to take this case off his hands?
In which children's
Danny,
clothes were
no,
removed while
not
they were
these
at school.
people.
The children all replied that nothing had happened. That was until the district attorney took the children to this nationally recognized therapist on child abuse,
Key McFarland of CII, the Children's Institute International. She drew forth horrifying stories of molestation from literally hundreds of children, based on play therapy sessions which she videotaped.
I don't think the depth of terror that can be put into a child should be underestimated. I've been working in this field for 13 years, and I haven't seen a situation that compares to this. It's simply horrifying. They said the teachers mutilated animals at their school.
Oh, God, the poor
telling the
babies.
children that their parents would receive similar treatment. Is it any wonder that they kept silent?
How do you get
Danny, this thing is going to be plastered all over everywhere by tomorrow morning.
I hope so. What a case.
And that way they don't feel the parents will be killed because it's the puppets that are saying it, not them.
Are the children able to...
We've been on this case for weeks, and it still gives me the creeps.
Yes.
Yeah, have you thought about those parents? The guilt, the betrayal they must be feeling? God, they trusted their children to these people. A case like this makes you glad you're a prosecutor.
In the meantime, to the outrage of many parents, Ray Bucky remains a free man. The grand jury...
Okay, Kelly, I'll take it. The case is mine.